Welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast, a podcast to inspire men on their healing journey and give practical tools to use in everyday life for mental and emotional support. I'm your host, Aaron Cartwright. Welcome back to the Hearts of Men podcast. I'm Aaron Cartwright. Today's episode is all about forgiving yourself and how to forgive yourself and why we need to forgive ourselves. Before I go on, I apologize about the flicking lights. If you follow me on social media, I'm traveling in my van around Australia, so forgive me for the unprofessional flickering lights, but it's the best I can do for now. With that, let's go forwards with the episode. I want to talk about forgiving yourself. Now, this has come up a lot. I've worked with a lot of men over the past, especially 3 years, especially the last year. And I've seen a consistent pattern with us men that not all of us, but consistently, there's a lot of us that beat ourselves up for shit we've done in the past, right? We think we're a bad person. We cannot forgive ourselves for things we've done in the past. Now, we've all done shit in the past that we aren't proud of. We've all made mistakes. We've all hurt people unintentionally or intentionally. And with that came guilt and shame. Okay, so when we do something in the past, when we do something that hurts someone else, let's say you cheat on your girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever, right? And especially if they find out, you're gonna have guilt. You're gonna have shame, most likely. If you're a human, you're gonna have shame and guilt. Now, that shame and guilt isn't a bad thing. That shame and guilt, you could call it healthy shame, healthy guilt. Because it's trying to teach you, hey, maybe we don't do that. Okay, maybe let's learn from this and not do that. Maybe there's another way we can go about this. Okay, there's healthy shame and healthy guilt trying to teach us a lesson. Okay, now the problem is that shame and guilt of the fuck up in the past, we really take that with us to the future, and we can't shake it, and we hold it against ourselves. We beat ourselves up constantly because we don't want to be that person. We don't want to be that monster. We don't want to turn into that person again. So what do? We just beat that part of us up. Let's say you're 18 or let's say you're 20 and you cheat on your girlfriend and you're beating yourself up and now you're 30 something. And what you're doing is you're just punching that 20-year-old version of you consistently. Fuck you. Fuck you. You better not show up. You better not show up. And the reason we do that is because we don't want that 20-year-old version who cheated, that piece of shit or whatever you call him, to show up again to ruin your relationships. And that makes sense because I get it. I've had those parts as well. I get it. And another benefit of that, the reason why we do it, is that can, to a certain extent, help us not reenact the cheating or reenact because we're beating ourselves up so much that we turn into the opposite, or we're just hiding that part of ourselves so much that because we don't want to do that again. And that makes sense. And this is not to shame you for doing that. This is to understand that it's probably not the healthiest way long term. Okay? Because what you're doing is, let's say, for example, relationships, by the way. It's a good one. Why do we get in relationships? Because we want to feel loved. We want to share love with someone deeply. We want to have intimacy. We want to share our lives with someone. We want to feel that love for someone. The problem is you can only feel love at the depth that you have for yourself. We can only truly love ourselves to the depth that we have for ourselves. Now, if you're beating yourself up constantly for things you've done in the past, you're not truly loving yourself. You're hating parts of yourself. You're not forgiving parts of yourself. You're not understanding parts of yourself. You're not understanding that those parts didn't know what they were doing. You didn't understand those parts didn't have the guidance, or there was reasons. We're not condoning what you've done in the past. We're not condoning the bad shit or the mistakes or the things you've done in the past to hurt others. Okay? This is not condoning bad behavior, but it's understanding your bad behavior was unconscious. Understanding your bad behavior made sense at that very moment, considering your mindset. It's not to say to keep doing it. The paradox of forgiving yourself for shit in the past is you can actually move forwards and shift a lot differently. When you begin to embrace the parts that have made mistakes and and start truly forgiving yourself by embracing these parts of you and loving them and understanding them, it doesn't mean just because you're going to love yourself and love these parts that you're going to now condone it in the future. It's actually the opposite. It's like a child. When a child makes a mistake, if you tell him, you fucking prick, and you go to your fucking room, that's proven that doesn't help. In fact, it makes it worse. Now this child feels like he's a piece of shit. Now he starts believing he's bad, right? So has this belief that he's bad, he's not worthy, he's not lovable. So how do you think he behaves? He behaves as if he's not lovable. That could be acting out and being rebellious, or that could be people pleasing, trying to get everyone to love him because he doesn't love himself. That's what happens as adults, as men. We do the same thing. Okay? When you beat yourself up for things you've done in the past, you'll either be a people pleaser and turn into this, please accept me. I hate that part of myself. I'll never be that again. Accept me. I'm not him. Okay? And you might get accepted by everyone, but deep down, you fucking hate yourself still. Deep down, you will still hate yourself because you're still not accepting parts of yourself. And that's the whole point, I believe, of life, is to start embracing these parts of us and forgiving them. So then we can move forward and be authentic, because you're not actually authentic if you haven't forgiven yourself. You're actually not your true self if you haven't forgiven yourself. If you've cheated, let's say, use cheating. It's an easy example. You've cheated in the past and you do not forgive yourself. In relationships, you're not showing up as your true self because you're trying to hide a part of yourself. You're trying to overcompensate for the part of you that cheated because you feel guilty and shame. So you start overcompensating and hiding that part of you, and you start overinflating this good boy image, this good guy image, or whatever this image is. So whenever we inflate ourselves, we're not our true selves. Whenever we deflate ourselves, we're not our true self. We're our true self when we're right in the middle. We have good and bad sides. We have light and dark sides. Okay? But when we shun parts of us that have done mistakes in the past, we cannot love ourselves. We can't be true to ourselves, which means we actually can't be true to others and have deep intimacy with others. And I'm specifically talking about relationships here, but this could be anything. This could be life in general. It's very hard to live a fulfilled life, even if everyone else loves you around you, even if everyone else accepts you, there'll be parts of you you do not accept. And even if everyone else accepts you, you have a hard time accepting their acceptance of you deep down. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. So, again, this is not condoning bad behavior. This is not a get out of free jail card to say, hey, you can go do what the fuck you like. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. When I started realizing this, and I realizing all the parts of me that I wasn't forgiving in the past for what I've done, the younger versions of me that made mistakes, that hurt people, sometimes intentionally, but most times not intentionally, unintentionally. When I started forgiving him, I stopped being such a people pleaser and I became more myself, and I had more love for myself, which means I could be my true self and show up in the world as me more and more. So the goal is to show up authentically, loving yourself, and being your best version by loving yourself and forgiving yourself. Okay? Hopefully this is making sense. Now, some people have done some horrible shit. You know, I've got some guests coming up in future episodes. And you listen to their stories, it's very tough for them to forgive themselves, but some of them have. Okay? And the reason is because if they don't, they're not enjoying life, and they're not going to love their life how they deserve. Even if you've done shit, you still deserve to have a good life. Hopefully this is making sense. Forgiving yourself is the best thing for you, but also others. Because the biggest gift you can give others is your true self, your true authentic self, not your fake people pleasing self and your mask that you give to everyone because you've done shit in the past that you're ashamed of. It's the true you, the real you with the heart. That's the part of you that is the most powerful and inspiring. So how do we do this? If you're saying, well, cool, Aaron, okay, I need to forgive myself for things I've done in the past. There's many ways you can do this. It takes practice, number one, though. Number one is a practice and commitment. It's not just this two-step process and you're done, right? This is a commitment to yourself of forgiving yourself time and time again. Because the things that you've done, maybe you've hurt someone physically, okay? And you're not proud of it. Maybe you've hurt someone emotionally. Maybe you've cheated. Maybe you've said some things. Maybe you've done things. Typically, to forgive yourself, it's not a one-step process. It's a continual practice of forgiving yourself. Once you start forgiving yourself, you'll feel lighter. You'll feel like yourself again. And you actually, this is the biggest secret. When you start forgiving yourself, you treat others. You're more authentic, by the way, but you still treat others with kindness, and you typically don't do those things that you are guilty about. Let's say cheating. Once you truly forgive yourself and you give yourself the love that you, because let's say with cheating, for example, again, typically people cheat because they don't love themselves. There's a lack of love for themselves. There's a lack somewhere. When you start giving yourself that love and that appreciation, and you're in a relationship, most likely you will not do that thing again. You don't have to keep beating yourself up for it. Because you won't have to, because you're loving yourself enough that you know that you don't need to do that. Same with anger and lashing out physically or emotionally. When you love yourself enough, you don't typically do those things. And if you do, it's very rare. Right? So the things you forgive yourself for will most likely stop you in the future from repeating those things that you don't want to repeat. Okay, so you got two options. You either beat yourself up for the rest of your life and fucking hate yourself, and punch yourself every day emotionally into changing and to not be that person, or you can truly forgive yourself and love yourself enough that you won't do those things in the future. Because a loving human towards himself doesn't act in certain ways, in most cases. So how do we do it? How did I do it? And what did I have to forgive myself for? Cheating. I cheated when I was younger. I hurt people. I wasn't a bully, but there was a couple people that I remember I bullied. Right? There's things I've said to people. There's actions I've done. I've stolen things. I've broken into places. I've stolen cars. I've done some things in my life that that hurt people and I wasn't proud of. And I had to keep forgiving myself. Because I was beating myself up deep down, beating myself up for not achieving things like not achieving my becoming I had a goal of being in the AFL, Australian rules football, and I didn't get to that stage. I'm nowhere near it. And I beat myself up for a long time. I can't forgive myself. I never achieved it. I had to forgive myself. Right? So one of the practices of forgiving yourself in the beginning that I learned is inner child work. And inner child work, and there's an episode, go to episode 2 or 3, and I talk about inner child work. In inner child work, you basically go back to the versions of you that fucked up, that made mistakes, and you become the parent, or you become the best friend, or you become the support or the therapist that you needed at that moment. And you give that version of you love and attention and compassion and empathy. And when you do that, it starts to change the way you remember the past and you remember yourself, and you start to begin to understand and love these versions of you. So to truly forgive, right? It's easy to say, I forgive you, but to truly forgive yourself, you have to love yourself. To truly forgive yourself, you have to love yourself. You have to love the parts that fucked up. You have to love the parts that made mistakes. So you can set yourself free. Because you trap yourself emotionally when you don't forgive yourself, when you don't love yourself. So one of the tools is inner child work, going back to that version at 20 years old or 30 years old or 5 years old or whenever you fucked up, going back and you're giving him supreme love unconditional love and understanding. Not because you're condoning what he did, not because he wants to do that in the future, but because you need to forgive yourself for the past. That version of you deserves to be forgiven. He's beaten himself up enough. It's time to forgive, to move on, to become your greatest version. So you can live a life that you deserve. Because you do deserve a good life, even if we've all fucked up. We all deserve to live a good life full of love for ourselves and others. And again, I want to say, by the way, forgiving yourself doesn't mean, let's say you forgive yourself for cheating in the past and hurting someone. That doesn't mean you're going to go and do it now because you forgive yourself. It's quite the opposite, I've realized. It's a paradox. Your brain will say, no, that's not right. If I forgive myself, that means I'll just go do it. You won't do it. Very rarely will you do it. Because someone, like I said before, someone who truly loves themselves typically doesn't behave that way. In most cases, you behave that way because you fucking hated yourself deep down. Because you were out of control. You didn't feel loved. You didn't feel safe. You didn't feel heard. You didn't feel understood. Now, that's not an excuse to do the behaviors, but it makes sense in a lot of cases. It makes sense because you felt a certain way and you acted. You didn't have the knowledge. You didn't have the skills. You didn't have the self-love in those moments to act different ways or know any better. But as you start to listen to this, you're starting to realize you're starting to know better. You can begin to give yourself love. So inner child work is very powerful to forgive yourself. Okay, going back to these versions and just seeing them for who they are. And being that parent, being that support that they wish they had in those times, that guidance they had. Sounds so simple, but it's very powerful. Another one is starting a practice of breath work, dropping into breath work. And when you do the breath work, you can go back and start to see, again, similar to inner child, go back and see these versions of you. Okay, because the truth is, there's a lot of emotions attached to the past and the things you've done. There's a lot of traumas. There's a lot of emotions stuck in you. So breathing helps us release those stuck traumas and emotions and brings them up and passes them through, which can also assist in forgiving. There's also other things you can do, like with the mindset, you can actually see the benefits, okay? How it served you. Let's say you cheated. Again, this is not to say it's a good thing to hurt people, okay? But the past is done. The past is done. So we want to start forgiving to start fresh and start be ourselves again. So one of the tools is to go back and see how it served you. What were the benefits of you doing that? What were the benefits of the other person? Okay. Now, this is controversial saying things like this because you can start to open up a can of worms. But I can guarantee there's always benefits. Can guarantee. For example, when you break up, let's say you got broken up with, someone left you. Okay. Someone broke up with you and broke your heart. At the time they broke your heart, you thought it was the worst thing in the world, right? You thought it was the worst thing. This is the worst fucking thing in the world. My life's never going to get better. This is the worst. I wish I was dead. 6 months later, a year later, 2, 5 years later, 10 years later, however long it takes, at some point you will look back and go, yeah, no, that was a good thing. That wasn't right for me. Okay? You'll see the benefits. Sometimes we can't see the benefits because our emotions are in the way. Our guilt is in the way. Our shame, our pain is in the way. So we can't see the other side. That's why time, if you look back, you'll see, most things that say you got broken up with, you'll see the benefits of it. You'll see that it actually wasn't the right thing in time. But the truth is, there's always two sides as well. Okay? There's always upsides. So one of the practices you can do is go back to the things you've done in the past and say, hey, yes, I fucked up. I don't want to repeat this again. But what were the benefits to me? What were the benefits to the other person? If you cheated and you broke up, maybe one of the benefits was you set them free and now they're with someone else that they're more aligned with. Okay, maybe it taught them a lesson of not being so, trusting, or there's many benefits to them, many benefits to you. Maybe it helped you move on and find someone differently. Maybe it helped you start to look within and start to work on yourself like it did for me. Okay. Now, what that does is that starts to level out the playing field, because in your mind, there's so many negatives associated with it. You can actually balance it out with some more positives. This can help you to see it for what it is. Okay. So there's many tools you can do, many tools. And I suggest getting some guidance in the beginning. You can start by yourself if you want to do the benefit thing. That's a good start. A lot of the times, a lot of the times you need to go a bit deeper though, and do the inner. I found inner child work a lot more effective to go deeper with it. But in the beginning, you can just start with the benefits. Now that will be very challenging, by the way. I'll just warn you. Doing benefits for shit that you are guilty about or you don't want to ever repeat again is very fucking tough. Okay, because there's so many negatives associated with it. But I promise there are positives. So that's a good start. Yeah, I just wanted to explain this because it's very important for us men to realize this, that you're not a fucking bad person, even if you made mistakes. You do deserve a good life. You do deserve to love yourself. You do deserve to be loved by others. You do deserve to have a fulfilled life full of energy and full of excitement and joy. You do deserve that. The thing that's stopping you, though, will be your guilt and shame from the past. The thing that will stop you from that will be not forgiving yourself for things that you've done in the past. That's the thing that will be stopping your joy the most. That's the thing that's stopping you from being yourself the most. And again, this is not to fucking judge, because I get it. I've done this. I get it. You don't want to be that person again. But what if you're not that fucking person? What if you've already learnt the lesson? What if you've already learnt it, but you're just carrying around rocks on your back from the guilt and shame? Probably most likely what's happening. So, do yourself a favor. Begin the process of forgiving yourself, which will help you, and it will help others as well. Okay. So this was a short podcast. If you've got any questions about forgiving yourself, let me know. I'd love to hear how you go. Just a little recap. You can start by, in a cognitive way, a mental way, you can start to see the benefits of the things that you've done to people, how it helped you and how it helped them. That will begin the process of forgiving yourself. A lot of times that won't fully do it because it's still deeper and you might have to go more into the body, and because there's stuff in the body. So inner child work can really help. Go back to the feelings and process it more, which then you probably need a guide like myself or someone who knows what they're doing. If so, reach out to me because I'd love to help you through that. But if you've got any questions, any further questions, just ask me. Hopefully this is just a little bit of a rundown on forgiving yourself. I haven't probably gone deep enough, but it's a good start for now. It's easier said than done. I realize this. It's not that easy, and it does take time. Okay, you can't just do the inner child once and you think you're going to forgive yourself. You can't just do the benefits once and think you. This takes some practice, but it is worth it. I promise it is worth it. Beautiful. One more thing as well. When you don't forgive yourself, it's very hard to be present. Okay, because you're always thinking about the past. You're always thinking about fucking up in the future again. And very rarely are you present with yourself or other people. Okay, so that was just something that popped in my mind. So when you do start forgiving yourself, you become way more present. And what does someone want more than anything? They want your presence. Whether that's your partner, your friends, your kids, whoever, your pet, they want your presence. Okay, so doing this type of work helps you become here and now, not in the past or future, worrying about fucking up in the future, and because you fucked up in the past and you're a piece of shit. No, you become way more grounded in the present. Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't already, make sure you're following me on socials and give me a message if you want any support, or if you've got any questions about this topic, let me know. I'd love to do further. I'd love to go deeper if you want me to. I'll speak to you guys soon. Thanks for watching this episode of Hearts of Men. I really appreciate it. If you could give back and give a like, a comment, a share, a review on any of the platforms you're watching on, that would really help me get my message out to more men. If you don't follow me on socials, please follow me, Aaron Cartwright, All Things Healing on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks, guys. See you on the next episode.